Hey, it's Kaylee. You know me as the Parts Girl, and I work here at PartsEdge. Thanks for following this awesome journey as we highlight thought leaders and trailblazers, share best practices in fixed ops, and cover success stories of how dealers sell more parts and service. This is the PartsEdge podcast with Kaylee Felio. Hey everyone, welcome to the PartsEdge podcast. I'm super excited to be interviewing Sarah. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, and I was just gonna try to pronounce your last name, so I'm gonna have everyone say I'm gonna have you say your full name and where you're at, who you're with.
Yes, so my full name is Sarah Ciociola, which is okay. Nobody can pronounce it on the first shot. When people pronounce it correctly on the first shot, I have a state of shock on my face because nobody ever gets it. But I'm Sarah Ciociola. I'm the Vice President of Paid Media and Account Strategy at PCG Digital.
Awesome, yeah, and we've connected before, and you have such an impressive background and just being in the industry for how long you've been in it. And I always like talking you up because I know sometimes it's hard to talk ourselves up. So you have been with the company for a long time, right?
Yeah, I have been it will be 8 years this year, which I cannot believe. I started at PCG as a junior social media specialist, like I said, almost 8 years ago. It was my first job out of school. I went to college for marketing, and I said I just really want to get my foot in the door at an agency to learn everything I can learn. And once I got my foot in the door, I really realized I love the automotive space and I love digital marketing. And our executive team has given me every opportunity to make my career what I've wanted it to be, which is why I'm here 8 years later.
That's amazing to really grow in your role. And you didn't, if I understood correctly, you didn't actually come into the auto industry. One like you weren't like I'm going to go work for an agency in automotive. You just wanted to work for an agency, and you kind of fell into auto. Is that how it
Yep, I
worked?
just fell into auto and I love it. I think it's a challenge every single day and it's constantly growing and changing. We're always trying to play catch up with every other industry, which is kind of fun to keep up with trends and see how you can apply them to automotive. So it gets my creative juices flowing every day, which I love.
Yeah, I do love how it's a challenge to kind of push back a little bit on the just like the way this is the way it's always been and that kind of thing. And today we wanted to talk about how search is changing, which is a huge topic. I mean, talk about keeping up with the trends. So you're more in that in than I am. I mean, I know as when I'm searching it's changing how I search. So talk to me about how you guys are, I guess, seeing the change and what dealerships can do to pivot.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, right, search is changing significantly. I think where we struggle as marketers in the automotive space is to make the marketing that we are executing relatable. So, what I like to tell dealers when I'm talking to them about just developing a strategy is would you interact with this kind of advertising? Would you interact with this graphic? Would you interact with this consumer journey that you are taking, your car buyers on digitally? And what's changing now, I think more than ever, we're seeing it really in the past year and a half, is the way that people use search to ultimately buy a car. So what was previously very, sales focused is now more discovery based. We're seeing a lot of people go to search to learn more, to absorb educational content, to understand, even from a fixed ops perspective, like when should I get my oil changed? What is a tire rotation? Where should I get these services serviced with? And that's where search is coming into play. Whereas, 2 or 3 years ago, it was very sales centric where people were searching to, convert, to make the phone call, to fill out the form. People aren't going to search right now to do those things. It takes so many digital touch points for a consumer to get to that point. I've seen some reports where people have 120 digital touch points from the time they're introduced to a dealership brand to the time that they convert. So how are you appearing all 120 times, throughout your entire digital journey? That's what dealers really need to focus on this year when they're developing their digital strategies. And education and discovery content via search is kind of the first priority to tackle that with.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people talk about when they're searching, like there was one example where you describe your lifestyle, you describe what's going on and just who you are, and then ask like what type of vehicle fits this type of lifestyle that I live. So I thought that was really interesting, and it's kind of funny to see like what it comes up with, like what type of vehicle they or whatever the search thinks you should be driving based on the information you give it. Are you guys seeing anything like that, or how are you guys applying, your strategy to dealerships with that type of search?
Yeah, we're seeing that a lot. We've coined it internally as like profile marketing, where we're like,
Mhm.
okay, what are a few profiles we can target? And we're creating different kinds of campaigns, like, dynamic search campaigns, or even on social, a lot of like incentive based advertising or branding advertising. But within those campaigns, we're speaking to very individual people. We're saying, okay, moms want to use SUVs, or maybe a commuter or a car enthusiast, or different profiles. We're creating different creative, different messaging. And at PCG, we're agnostic to all customer data platforms. So if a dealer comes on with us and they have Orbi or Full Path or Auto Miner, any of the CDPs out in the automotive world, we can utilize those audience segments to really target those people and speak to them specifically. And that has proven to be very successful for us.
Yeah, it's no longer just that blanket approach of trying to find a message that's going to fit everyone because we're so advanced now. It's No one wants that.
Yeah,
Like I
and there's so
see
many
voice
dealers.
stuff on when I'm on my phone, then I'm like, why are you showing me this? I'm not interested in this. you
Exactly,
know?
and there's so many dealers who are still throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that it'll stick, and I always like to tell dealers, "Look at every other industry. Do you see any other industry doing digital advertising this way?" Like Amazon and the big conglomerates, they are targeting you with very specific things that you want, and guess what? You're buying that stuff. So why isn't automotive following suit? So starting to create strategistrategies that are very specific to different audience segments is a great way to kick that off.
Yeah. And I also wanted to ask you too about your perspective on, because I believe social media obviously is getting a lot of attention, but as an um, individuals at the dealership, whether you're in fix, I mean, it's being more talked about in sales, of course, but just building that social media, that content as an individual and pushing that because I feel like the bigger companies do that too. Like Amazon has, what do they call them? Promoters or people that are connected and bringing them back to. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, like creating influencers within your dealership.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's even from a fix ops perspective, creating educational content from you want to call like influencers or people that just want to have fun with creating content. When we introduced TikTok advertising at the agency, I had so many dealers saying, we're not creating any content. And I go to look inside TikTok and the dealership itself doesn't have any content, but like all their salespeople, some fixed op people were coming up with individual accounts. And I'm like, you can use this content,
Yeah.
organically on a paid scope. Like people like to create content, people do it naturally every day. When you're posting stories on your personal pages or posts on your Instagram, that's creating content. Like, why not do it at your profession as well and let your dealership use that, or just be the representative who's pushing that content out for the dealership.
So how would you tie that back into as a company? Like, so you have all the influencers, we're going to call it influencers in your store. How do you take that or do you have them create their own for the company? Like, do you reshare? Like, how does that all work? Or what do you guys see work?
I think what works best is brainstorming together, right? Like, okay, what do we want to push? What do we want to focus on? And the less salesy that it is, whether it's from the variable or the fixed op side, the better. So, like I mentioned earlier, educational content is really what ends up converting. And what once you start posting and creating educational content, you can use it on the organic side. We use it a lot in the paid ad side through you could use it for performance max campaigns, you can use it in social campaigns. The more on the ground content you can give your vendor or your agency partner to push on a paid scope, the better your paid advertising will perform. And then as a secondary benefit, it will allow us to generate data into your pixels, your tracking scripts, your CDP to allow us to retarget those users down the road with incentive based advertising, again, for variable or for fixed ops. And that's what we like to call life cycle marketing, right? Where you're bringing them through your life cycle journey and you're never stopping to retarget them. You're just understanding where they are in that journey and giving them relatable content for where they're at.
That completely makes sense because I like going back to what we've already said, it's always been just kind of targeting them and kind of spraying it and not really
Exactly.
identifying where they are in life cycle because that's such a huge thing. There's a huge it's a life cycle. It's always everyone's in and everyone's life is changing. Cycles, I don't know if you want to say cycles are changing. I don't know. Everyone's life's changing. So we have to
Yeah.
track it.
Exactly, and I think where dealers struggle is, well, this isn't a lead generation ad. This isn't a lead generation strategy, so we don't wanna put money behind it. But the people who are going to convert with you are people who trust you, and you can't build a digital community of people who trust you if you're not giving them branded content, if you're not giving them content that they want to interact with, and just developing trust and a relationship with your community for them to want to convert with you. If you're just running lead generation advertising, yeah, you may get a ton of leads, but how many of those leads are quality because people don't even know who your brand is or what you stand for? Especially
Yeah,
with the Gen Z market, we're seeing that more and more too, where they want to shop with dealers who they trust, who they know represent something more than just selling cars or doing service with cars. And the more that you promote that organically and on a paid scope, the better your lead generation is when you decide it's right to serve them those kinds of ads.
I think basically what you're saying is the lead gen or constantly focusing on lead gen makes you just look like you're just like a annoying salesperson. Basically, you're just like
Exactly.
it's not nurturing, it's not educating, it's not. You're just trying to get, and then the leads that you're going to get are probably where they should be. Like in you know what I mean, like where they're you probably get leads where their life cycle is not really where they are. Like they're not. What am I trying?
Exactly.
Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it's not quality, they're focusing on quantity over quality, and like I said, when you're building a community of trust, especially digitally, that's who the people who are going to not just convert with you, but who are going to ultimately buy a car or service with you, and not just service with you once, service with you every single time, and not just them, but their family and their friends, and they will not do
The
that if
trust.
they do not trust you.
Exactly, the trust. Now I want to pivot a little bit to just more on the fixed ops. Is there anything that you guys are seeing that's really successful that you could share that maybe other dealerships aren't thinking about or looking at when it comes to fixed ops and search and digital and all of that stuff?
Yeah, so I think digital strategies on the forefront for fixed ops that work really well for us at PCG. The first on the paid search side, so Google advertising, right? The Automotive Standards Council, for those who are listening who are not familiar, the Automotive Standards Council created a standard of event tracking across automotive to allow us to optimize Google advertising for sales and for service. Before the Automotive Standards Council was introduced and starting to be utilized across dealerships across the country, we were having very basic event tracking capabilities and just throwing them all into Google Ads and not being able to say, okay, this call is representative of a sales call and this call is representative of a service call. Same with form submissions, same with chat, same with text. Through the ASC Council, we can now do that. So we are able to optimize on the Google search side. Event tracking for fixed ops only. So when we're reporting on calls and form submissions for display ads that are for fixed ops or for search ads that are for fixed ops, we can truly say these are calls and forms and conversions for your fixed ops department. And that has really helped us generate some data that will allow us to create better strategies down the road because we know we're really looking at that service center data. And then the second thing that's really working well for us on the meta side are call ads for fixed ops, which a lot of people don't even realize that's an option in the meta
Wait,
side
what?
of things. Yeah, so
Okay,
you can run call ads in meta ads. You could do it for sales, but you could definitely do it for fixed ops too. And we actually run it for service more than we do for sales. And you just attach the service ring to number, and we see a lot of success, a lot of calls at a low cost per call volume on the meta side, which is great.
that's interesting because I always I feel like a broken record, and I don't know if I just feel like no one really wants to call a dealership. So it always surprises me that people are still calling. But I think they still call because that's just the process that we've trained the consumer to do. And then when you go online to schedule, it's a complete mess and super difficult. So we kind of force people to call in a way. But that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, I think people call more on the fixed op side to schedule appointments, than they would on the variable ops side for sure. At least that's what we see through our
Oh yeah,
advertising.
no one wants to call like, "Hey, I want to buy a car." No, you
Yeah,
want to
no,
like
nobody does
browse.
that. Nobody even fills out forms anymore. That's what I try to tell dealers all the time. Like, when's the last time you filled out a form because you had interest in something? I mean, never, because you know you're going to get bombarded with phone calls, texts, emails. Nobody wants that anymore. And yet we're still basing all of our digital marketing effort success on form fills. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, that is insane. So what is the solution? Like, what are you guys, or instead of doing that, like, how how are you tracking, I guess, the success? If because that's how we've always tracked it, right? The forms. If you get a bunch of leads, that's the success. And it's like, how are you guys kind of, what's your metric or what are you tracking?
Yeah, it's hard because that's kind of the broken piece of automotive in regards to running digital advertising. Like, we are so lead focused because um, it's such a big buy. It's like, you buy a car, you buy a house, and then the next biggest purchase is buying a car, right? So it is hard to run advertising that's not lead generation focused. But what I always like to present in our digital marketing reports, whether it's on paid search or social, is digital retail engagement. So, say leads are down, or calls are down, or texts or chats are down, or something like tangible that a dealer's like, okay, well, I got the name and the phone number, I got their information. Say that's down 1 month or even 2 months in a row, but sometimes their digital retail engagement from these paid search or social channels are really, really high, which is showing us, okay, maybe people aren't ready to convert, but they're interacting with you. They're interacting with your finance tool, they're interacting with your photos and all of this good stuff to showcase, like, we are targeting the right people and they are interacting with your website. And the car buying journey is so long. We see 120-day car buying journeys by the time they're introduced to your brand, like I said earlier, and by the time they're converting with you. So making sure that you are still present while they're interacting with you. It doesn't mean that your advertising is failing just because your lead gen is down if your digital retailing events are all still being worked with and showing success that way.
So it's almost like changing the mindset of the matrix of success. Not
Yeah.
not matrix, but metric, whatever however you say it.
I was just gonna say, and just understanding how people wanna interact with you online, right? Like, they don't want to call you, like you said, they don't want to fill out forms, so if they're interacting with your website, that's fantastic. If they're hopping on your website and jumping off, then you have a problem with your marketing.
Okay, that's and it applies to everyone's business because I'm thinking about ours too. Like I see all the people that come onto our website and look at and on what they're looking at. I see what they're downloading. Like that's how I know there's some interest, and then that's how I can nurture and give them the message that they want to see. It sounds easier than it is.
It does sound a
Yeah, you
lot
hire
easier
people to
than it
help you.
is. Yeah, and it's a long-term game. It's not something that you can accomplish in 30 days, and we always like to tell our dealers that, like, the dealers who have the most success on digital are the ones that stay tried and true, even through the times where your leads are down, like I said, or, you don't have the money to put into digital advertising. Like, the dealers who still scrape to find those funds, or who still stick through and understand how to really track success digitally in 2026 for automotive are the ones that find consistent results down the road. The ones who turn things on and off, on and off, on and off, take money, give money, take money, give money. Those are the ones where we can't get a good gauge because we're constantly changing things.
Yeah. I've always heard in marketing, everything in digital, anything really in business, it's consistency. It's you
Right.
can't just have this up and down. And so what was my I was gonna ask you something about that with the um that's how you guys know that I do not plan my questions and we have a real conversation. Okay. Because I always think of the questions as we're talking. Oh, I was gonna ask you, what would be how do you set a realistic budget to stay consistent? Is that a good like question. I don't know. Like, I would think that you would like, what do you look at to gauge how much to spend, and when do you pull back a little bit? I mean, no, I don't want to say pull back, but there are times, right, that you kind of pull back, or do you have to stay steady the whole time?
Yeah, there's definitely months where we recommend pulling back. So when we're creating a strategy and a budget right from the jump where we have no data to kind of look at, we look at basic things like you would assume, like inventory, location, population. We ask them about previous budgets that they've used. What kind do they want to be super competitive in their market, who their competition is, where they fall in line with that competition, what their competition is running digitally. We look at all of those things and put together a baseline. Let's kick it off here. Then what I like to tell dealers is let's run this for 60 days, not 30 days, 60 days. Let's stick with this budget for 2 months. And then let's see where we can pull back, where we can pull forward, where we're like, okay, this kind of campaign is not working in your market, but this one is doing really, really well. Let's pull back budget here and add budget there. So every month we're having those conversations with dealers, and we don't take a percentage of ad spend at PCG. So we are fine with being like, you got to cut this $5,000, or especially in Q4, this is a big one too. We either say if you can't afford to increase your budget by 20%, especially during December where it's like the height of the season, you may want to cut back significantly because your baseline budget for digital in December is going to be a waste of budget because you're not going to be able to
Yeah.
compete. So
Yeah.
either pull back significantly or propel forward. That's the only way that's going to work. So we have those conversations all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even think about that when you were talking about budget. I was like, yeah, that's probably part of the strategy to really look at all that data to strategize what you need to do. It's not just like, oh, here you go, this is what works for other people. It's like, no, you're actually figuring out what's working for them and their market. And you can apply
Yeah,
what
exactly.
pieces too, of course, but yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of dealers are always asking for things like benchmarks. Well, are these leads enough? Is this good? Is this number good? And I always just like to tell them we don't work off benchmarks. There's so many variables in your account, your dealership, your competition, your budget, your inventory, your sales process, right? Like it even goes down to what's happening on the floor. I try my best not to provide benchmarks because dealers take them and hold them so, so tight, and I'm like, you really have to look at your own data and compare it month over month and year over year and use that as benchmarks.
Yeah. Well, and you said something important too, the sales process, because that happens a lot. You work so hard to bring people in, and if you have a crappy sales process and you lose people, it's like you're wasting so much money. But I know that you guys don't completely solve that, but still, it's something to be aware of, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tale as old as time. We generated 100 sales opportunities, but somehow you had no sales that month. How does it make sense? It all comes down to the sales process.
Yeah, it really does. Okay, so we're almost at time. I wanted to, are you guys, well, this is gonna go out after NADA, so we won't talk about that. Is there anything that you want to bring up that I didn't touch on? Because I know that I don't really plan the questions and I just kind of ask you stuff, but do you feel like is there something I'm like missing in the message or what we're talking about?
No, I think the only thing that I could add to the conversation is like we talked about earlier, the way that we run digital advertising in automotive is changing because the consumer and the way that they search and digest that digital advertising is changing. And I had mentioned earlier, we run one campaign with multiple ads based on different user profiles, trying to speak to different customers to get them to convert with you on specific terms like I'm a mom and I need an SUV, or I'm a commuter and I need high gas mileage or something like that, right? For dealers who are running their advertising in house, that can sound really, really daunting because it's a lot of manual work to run one campaign with 12 different ads and 12 different creatives and ad copy and all that stuff. That could take you hours. So, automation is going to be huge in 2026, and utilizing AI to launch those campaigns at scale is going to be huge. What we're doing at PCG is building a tech stack that will allow us to use all of those strategies that we love and put them into automation so we can launch them at scale. So it'll be very easy and very quick for our team. And for dealers who are doing advertising in house, I encourage you to look into automation and AI and see how you can fine tune those strategies for yourself and make your lives easier. A lot of people are thinking AI is kind of like a cop out or they don't know where to start. Start with how can it make your life easier because you're the brains behind your brand. You're the brains behind knowing how consumers shop, and utilize AI to do the rest, I think is a fantastic goal for dealers in 2026.
Yeah, I love that perspective too. I think, and the other thing we're talking about more, we're talking less. I mean, AI obviously is still a part of the conversation, but we're talking more about like culture and all of that. I'm hearing that come
Mhm.
up more. But the way you said that was perfect because it's not a fix. It's AI is not a fix. AI is a way to automate, to expand, to kind of like do that heavy lifting so that you can really be more creative, really, in a way. It's like, like you just said, your market, so you can be more creative instead of just doing all those tasks that you shouldn't be doing. Automate it. Automate
Yeah,
as much.
exactly. Yeah, don't be scared to introduce AI because you think they people are gonna think you're lazy or not doing your
Yeah.
job. Use it to your advantage.
Yeah, because then you could do more. The other
Exactly.
thing to ask you, is who you talk about all this stuff, but who in the dealership is the one that should be doing this and should be thinking about this? Because I feel like the roles at dealerships are kind of like we all kind of do multiple roles within, like every company really does that. But I think that's the same at dealerships. It's like sometimes it's this person, sometimes it's that person. So who do you guys deal with the most? I guess that's my question.
We're starting so I will say a few years ago, our point of contacts at the dealership were a lot of the times like GMs and dealer principals, and it was hard. It was hard to have creative, engaging conversations about digital to these people who that was a blimp on their radar for the day, which is fair, right? Like a GM, a dealer principal, they shouldn't be worrying about this stuff. The people who are in charge of marketing, whether it's marketing coordinators, marketing directors, CMOs at big dealership groups, when we have them as our point of contact, those are our most successful clients because we're able to have really creative, engaging, sometimes in the weeds conversations that we can't have with people who are maybe a little bit higher up at the dealership. We even find that even though we're, a vendor and an agency, we work with dealers who have full marketing teams at their dealership and they still are like, we still need to outsource this digital piece because there's so, like you said, those marketing people in the dealership wear so many hats. I mean, I'm seeing dealers who have content creators now, which is incredible. Last year, I was begging people, like, can somebody please create some content for us to use? And now they're
Yeah.
like, hey, I have a content coordinator. I will put them in touch with you. And that's
Oh, that's
phenomenal.
amazing.
So we are moving forward
Yes,
slowly, like anything in automotive, but we are moving forward.
we are. There's such a difference. And just seeing what everyone's talking about, we're moving forward. It's really awesome to see. And it's awesome to see all the different tech out there. And it also is hard too. It's so overwhelming with all the solutions out there and like who's gonna survive, who's, not, or who's going to survive and who's not gonna survive, those types of things. Because it's a lot to keep up with as far as tech. And I can't imagine just the dealerships how overwhelmed they are with, because I mean they're running multiple businesses under a business, really. So it's insane.
Yeah,
Anyways, a whole
chasing
nother.
shiny objects all of the time.
Yes. Okay, so that's about all I had for you. I love this conversation. And I hope it's so good to have you on in a different perspective too. For because fixed, we always talk about, we just talk about the customer. We don't really talk about marketing, advertising, and that type of thing. So it's cool to have you on to give that to the audience. So hopefully everyone appreciated that conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you so much.